Anti-Society, welcome back to the Anti-Social Planet, and today we are watching episodes 7 and 8 of Vinland Saga. So the last couple of episodes, I'm not gonna lie, were a lot of stress for me between like animals getting hurt and people being mean to Thorfinn, and Thorfinn just kind of like going through the whole transforming process of him just kind of being terrifying. Like, he was such a cute little kid, and now he's just become this very quiet and like very intense person, and also like quite deadly given the number of people that he you know killed during these fight scenes. He was pretty well covered in blood at one point, so a lot of stress for me to go through that, but I also think that it was a good representation of like time passing and Thorfinn shifting in who he was as a result of everything that's happened with him. I like that we got to see him adapting to his particular fighting style. It didn't match what the other pirates or Vikings, I guess we could just call them Vikings, but they're slightly different. Anyway, we're fighting. Their fighting style was different from his. He was smaller, but that also means that he is a little bit more acrobatic with his fighting style. I liked getting to see that he had to come up with his own. We saw that he was like out in the wilderness kind of trying to survive on his own, and he was figuring out how to use his knife and like throw knives and stuff like that on his own because he couldn't rely on anyone to train him. So I liked getting to see that part of his character as well. And we got to see him interacting with one of the English families that was in one of the towns. So we are getting into the conflict between the English and the Norse, and how that conflict is starting to unfold with these band of pirates that Thorfinn has sort of joined, partly joined. He's kind of like following them around because he needs to prove himself in battle to be able to like take vengeance for his father. Seeing some of the English that are there and Thorfinn getting to know them, seeing them, partly him getting to see them as like human, but then I think also connecting them to his own family, which he hasn't seen in quite a while, and they probably presume that something awful has happened to him. I mean, last we saw them, they were mourning about Thor's, especially his sister, trying to deal with it, but I think also they're probably worried about how Thorfinn would survive at all out there on his own, especially if there is a band of mercenaries that can kill Thor's. They could probably kill Thorfinn if they wanted to, so I'm sure that he saw that connection with his mother and sister, and also I think just being around kind people. Like, I think being around these Vikings, he's been only influenced by them and like how they see the world, and they're very like cynical and violent, and they really don't feel any compassion for him. And then to find people who are compassionate and caring and giving is probably like a little bit of a, I don't know, shakes his foundation a little bit of how he's been dealing with all of the trauma and like surviving in this environment. And we got to see a beautiful moment where he switched between like this kind of innocent, more younger Thorfinn look on his face when he was looking at the woman who had helped him, and then when he kind of hardened his expression again and decided to join into the fighting. So we're getting to kind of see this inner conflict of Thorfinn, of like who he thinks he needs to be and then who he really is. So I'll be interested to kind of see how he develops in this like more grown-up form, and how he is going to shift and evolve as they get more involved in this war between these two sides that he kind of doesn't belong to either for. It's gonna be, I think, still stressful for me. But hopefully we will get to again learn some interesting things about the characters. Maybe we will check in with his family again. I did like getting to see them and some of their reaction. So let's just get into episode 7 in 3, 2, 1, go. Are these refugees from the invasion? So I'm assuming we're getting another bit of a time jump, or it might be like what's been going on in the world while Thorfinn has been doing his thing. A glimpse of the king. It's true though, if you don't really want to fight in the winter, it'll just cause like a lot more issues. So I guess there's a bit of a respite for a little bit. So are the pirates leaving? Because they're not gonna attack, so they're gonna move on to people who want to hire them. Migrate? I mean, if you can go somewhere warmer, you might as well. Interesting framing of that shot leading into France. Interesting. I don't know a lot of like French history outside of how it connects to like Canada. And I guess like some like the big historical events related to France. Ooh, some interesting shot decisions, which I'm focusing on because the violence makes me sad. It's a good representation of like how it's kind of like it's affecting everything. You know, like even if you them going south away from England, there's still fighting going on. There's so much like turmoil at this point in history. I wish I knew more about it because I really only know about like the United Kingdom and like Celtic kind of history around like their interactions with like the early English and stuff. He has a bit of a crazed look though. The idea of getting into another fight, like a raid. I'm very worried about him. There's just a lot of like he chooses to kind of dissociate from what's going on, which worries me. Because that's really like because you kind of see the other people that he's with, even like Askeladd in that instance, where like you could see a definite glee to the idea of getting into a conflict. And you see that like when we've seen them in like the last couple of episodes where they're like raiding villages and stuff like that. Whereas like Thorfinn legitimately seems to be blank, like intentionally, um, with a few exceptions of when he kind of lets his rage come out to kind of propel him through like a confrontation. But in most instances, when it's just like fighting in general, he seems to have a very dissociated, blank expression, with the exception of like fighting Askeladd, um, which is like a understandable coping mechanism, but a worrisome way of dealing with trauma and um, stressful situations. I mean, he's still a child who's literally in the middle of a war, um, and has gone through a lot to end up in this situation. So just something to keep note of. I'm sure that that facade will break at some point. So they're offering to help France, even though they were helping England. I mean, it makes sense that they would be with whatever team they thought were winning in that particular instance, because the winning team can pay them. You know, the dead can't pay what they agreed to. He sounds much older here, so I'm assuming that the time jump, like a couple of years, also happened with Thorfinn. Offering him money seems like a bad idea. He's definitely not in it for the money. I mean, it's fair logic. If you have to send a messenger who might not come back, you might as well send the like least important person that you have. I love the language recognition, even though they're like speaking Japanese, so it's weird, but I like that he legitimately runs into like English and, you know, like Franks that like just don't understand what he's saying because he speaks Norse. I love the use of translation too. See, like even here, he's like not. There's no fear in this instance, and I feel like to a certain point, like Thorfinn doesn't care if he dies. Not really. The signal. But where will that land? My concern is that we're gonna set something on fire. Okay, so I think they might be on the side of the English still, because I feel like the Franks are the ones in the fort, and that doesn't seem to be where Thorfinn is. I might have like missed uh what exactly they were talking about, and I apologize for that. I mean, that's one way to intimidate people. He seems unpleasant. The translator's not sure what to say to that. Yeah, okay. So we're fighting the Franks in the fort, I'm assuming. I don't know if it really matters which ones are the English and which one are the Franks. I don't know how much politics is gonna work into this, at least from like Thorfinn's story. Is he just gonna go for it? Ah, right. Because he thinks that if he gets it, he'll be able to challenge Askeladd to a fight again. What's going on? The uh Askeladd and friends with the dragon. I love the running with the boats. True pirates. It's definitely a statement, especially with the dragon. Yeah, Askeladd definitely seems to have kind of a manic glee about fighting. Look at Thorfinn go though. Careful of the spikes though. The water, arrows. One way to get across a moat too. Ah, so they're attacking from both sides now. Nobody's noticed him yet. I su- I guess they're probably not suspecting anyone to like scale the walls. Oh dear. Not really. I mean, he is a child, but like not quite what you're probably expecting. Ooh, well executed though. I'm like torn between being horrified that this child is this good at fighting people and impressed by his skill. Good POV shot too. Ooh, dang. You gotta have like precision to do that. Cause like you gotta hit just the right spot to get like the cartilage instead of the bone with like a knife. You might be able to with like a bigger weapon. You can put more weight behind it. Dang. Like I said, mix between horrified and impressed. Ooh, bad luck. Yeah, they already took care of it. That's what happens when you make deals with Vikings. You'd better pay them though. If you try to not pay them what you promised, which this guy seems a little bit inclined to cheat people out of their deals, uh, it's gonna end poorly for him. Say this is a bad idea that you're gonna try and attack them instead of paying them. They literally just like attacked this entire village. They clean it out because that sounds like them. Well, there's a cup. Yeah, they do that. They're Vikings. Pillaging is kind of their thing. Sorry. Just showing up in the crown and the coat. I mean, I don't like Askeladd, but that guy deserved it. It's kind of a smooth move. He's trying to get the head. Cue him showing up. Yep, there he is. Of course he is. He's fueled by pure rage. I guess it's been a number of years since they fought. Are they gonna pass by this group with their dragon boats going down the waterfall? Dang, gutsy. I think they're all Franks then. I need like a I need to like brush up on my history. My like early 11th century history because I don't know much. Outside of like 1066 is William the Conqueror and stuff around that. Well, that's a number of years from where we are in this part of the show. This episode felt like it was far more interested or focused on the dynamic of the pirates, Vikings themselves, Askeladd and his group, especially since we had them making this deal with the English and helping them out. We had a bunch of that happening in the last few episodes, and now them making a deal with some of the Franks as there's infighting there. We kind of see that as things are put on hold in England during the winter, which makes sense because it gets really cold in the north during the winter. Everything's kind of been put on hold to leave the fighting until the spring or the summer specifically. So these pirates just travel farther south to where it's warmer, making their way to France and getting involved with those conflicts. And I think it really paints a picture of the kind of people that Thorfinn is surrounding himself with. The fact that like not only are they willing to just kind of migrate to where there's other fighting, going where the fighting is, but also, like I was saying during the reaction, this manic glee that comes along with their fighting. And I think it's a great contrast to like how you can see Askeladd like really enjoying being a part of this, getting the treasure, but also just being in the conflict itself and seeing the carnage of it, even if he wasn't necessarily fighting people one-on-one himself. And then you see Thorfinn, who's really just here because he's trying to get his next duel against Thorfinn. So it's very interesting to see the contrast of the personalities and really show the frame of mind that these pirates have about, loyalty. Like they really aren't loyal to anybody. Like even at the end, they made this deal with this one particular lord, I think he was, of the Franks, and them saying like,
oh, we'll get half of the treasure if we help you out.
Or half of whatever we get out of this. And of course, Askeladd taking everything and leaving because he's like, oh, well, our half is the treasure, your half is the glory. So him kind of finding these loopholes because he isn't really loyal to anybody. He's only loyal to himself. And even within like his group of men that he's in charge of, people getting shot by arrows around him, and he's like, well, there's going to be some casualties. That's just part of being part of a conflict. Or saying, well, we'll send Thorfinn because like there's a good chance that they'll kill whatever messenger we send, so we'll send him because he's not important. He really only has loyalty to himself and what he wants. And I feel like there's kind of like some ambiguity about exactly his personality and how, I don't know, immoral he might be. And I feel like this episode kind of cemented it for me, like that really his interest in Thorfinn at all, I think, is really just his interest in Thor's and like how great and legendary of a fighter he was, like the kind of like notoriety of him, kind of the legend around him, and the fact that Thorfinn is his son. I feel like he really does just have an interest in him in terms of the potential that Thorfinn has, and I think the gain that Askeladd could have in response to Thorfinn succeeding and becoming this really good fighter. We've already seen that he has profited from it. I feel like he definitely sees him more as like an investment for the future as opposed to like a child that he should be concerned with in any way. And Thorfinn obviously dissociating from all of this fighting because he's really just focused on like his anger and his revenge. I'm curious to see exactly how that'll break, because it has to at some point. Like, Thorfinn isn't the villain, I'm assuming, of this series. So if he isn't the villain, then that means that at some point he's going to have to break past that revenge aspect. But perhaps we are going to get another rematch between the two of them. I don't know if Askeladd will keep his word of them going having another duel once they have like solid land or whatever. But let's just get into episode 8. In 3, 2, 1, go. Okay. This seems very peaceful. It can only end in tragedy. Especially since it looks like Askeladd's like 3 ships. Oh, do we know him? Who's the guy with like the bear hood? Do they have a village? It's weird to think of them as just like normal people, like in a village, after they just like, you know, went around killing off a bunch of people. So in the winter they like take a break too. And it seems to be like a regular thing. So like, what does Thorfinn do? I mean, I assume he's gonna pick a fight with Askeladd, but like, obviously his home is not this village. So does he just like hang out, train? He's definitely not like he hasn't like befriended any of the other pirates or anything. Does winter make him think of home because it was winter when he ended up leaving with his dad? Because it's kind of come like full circle, except like years later. Isn't Thor's friend still searching for Thorfinn? We just haven't seen him since he was like leaving on his boat. I wonder if that'll come back. At least during like, I know that like this season is like kind of like a prologue. So like maybe I won't find out until like the new seasons. It's weird to think of them as being like almost like someone to look up to, you know, like Thor's was. Like it's just like a happy, like nice village, and it's weird because Askeladd. Yeah, don't pick a fight with him. He literally has nothing to lose, which is a very dangerous person. Just saying. All the girls. See, it's weird to think of people seeing him as like a hero or like a good person, because we've seen him like, you know, pick a fight, like kill a bunch of people, and literally he's a sword for hire. Is he actually his uncle? Or is that more like a, I don't know, an endearment? The total change freaks me out. Good voice acting, though. Do we just casually have slaves? Because I am strictly against that. Yep. Thorfinn's definitely gonna hold your word to this if you're just like relaxing. Does he see Thorfinn as nothing better than a slave? I mean, I guess in some ways he is. Think about the circumstances. I'm really looking forward to this because Thorfinn is like way better at fighting now than he used to be. They're both fairly like light on their feet too. Like even Askeladd is fairly like agile when he fights as well, which was not what I was expecting for someone who fights with like a sword. But I guess if you're fighting on a boat a lot, you'd have to kind of be light on your feet and be able to shift your balance a lot. Thorfinn also probably doesn't know how old he is. Like, is he keeping track? Ooh, he's quick though. You had to get away from it. I'm kind of proud. Again, a weird balance between horrified and impressed. I don't know what to make of Thorfinn. Ooh, clever. Letting go of it so it his sword so it doesn't like put him in a compromising position if you like it would have pulled his arm or his hand. It was better to like let go of it. I love the details in the fighting style of this show. Like it's just really rooted in realism. And I feel like a lot of the time when I'm watching anime and there are fights, it's like there's some magic elements to it, or like it's like shonen. It kind of goes a less realistic route with the fighting. Whereas like this show is very like realism based. I say that we're trying to enrage him. Don't act like you don't remember Thor's. You definitely do. He's just trying to like get a reaction out of him. Because if you're fighting with really strong emotions, you're not concentrating and you can slip up. But don't let your feelings get the best of you. Focus. No, you're gonna make a mistake now, which is what he wants. You gotta stay level headed. Disconnect like you usually do. See, you were doing good for a while. You just used his own momentum against him. He found Askeladd's always been good at like finding people's weak points and exploiting it. Did he like dislocate his shoulder? Poor Thorfinn. Reveling. What is the weird horn thing? I'm sure if I knew possibly more about Vikings and Nordic culture, I might know what it is. That's how I feel too. We're in an extreme cold warning where I am right now. I've been cold for days. You're gonna freeze out there though. I don't know how much he cares though. Like I don't think Thorfinn has a lot of self-preservation. He's tried. True, he also wants a fair fight. Yeah, like he wants to win in a fair fight to like prove something. I also think that's true. He's very single-mindedly focused on like just Askeladd. What happened? What's wrong? Are you sick? Hurt? A good observation though. We are all motivated by something. Gosh, I don't know how to feel about Askeladd. Because every time I'm like, yes, bad person. And then the next episode, I'm like, maybe not that simple. Or remembering father? You want to go inside though. It seems like the cold is making you hallucinate, which is worrisome. I really do feel like he's stuck in that point though. Like that moment after his father died and he was just like enraged and full of grief. Like he's just stuck there because of the trauma of everything. He doesn't know how to get past it. Probably. It's also a good point. We already established that like there isn't simply black and white, like good bad kind of thing. Ooh. Are we trying to make friends? Thorfinn, be nice. She's just a girl. She brought pie, so she can't be that bad. Offer her the blanket. Thorfinn, be nice. I feel like all of my mom instincts come out with Thorfinn. Can you? Then why do you stay with them? Mm-hmm. See, I think he did dislocate his shoulder because he has his arm like positioned. I mean, yes, as someone who grew up in Canada, that is basically what goes on. At least during the beginning of the European influence. We bring back Vinland, which is a plot point we dropped for a while. Remember when you used to love the thought of adventure? That's what you originally left home to do. Hello? Who are you? I've seen you in the opener. I really don't like you. He looks a lot older now, though. Ooh, we flashed forward. Summertime now. We're going back to war. There's a lot of time jumps. Is he a prince? Yes. Okay, candidate to succeed the throne. Is Askeladd and gang coming back to help Denmark? We'll see what happens with him. Because if he doesn't have a lot of experience on the battlefield, then I don't really know if he'll be like a good fighter and just hasn't been on a battlefield, or if he's like not a good fighter. Ooh, a map. I do like a good map. Sure. The original London. Pretty epic music coming in too. I feel like this is a pretty pivotal battle. Ooh. Heck of a throw. Are we gonna describe war as fun? That seems ill-advised. So after literally stating in the last episode that I was certain now, I was like, oh, we had kind of like some gray zone with Askeladd, but like this means that he's like really a bad person. Like look at him just taking joy from killing off a bunch of people. He's a bad person. And then we go to this episode and he's like a hero in this village, and now I'm like in this weird ambiguous place again with him, and I don't know what to do with those feelings because I want this to be black and white. Because it's like I was pointing out with Thorfinn, where I'm like, I'm torn between like feeling a lot of empathy for him because obviously I know that he's gone through a bunch of stuff. There's definitely a lot of trauma involved with him, and I definitely think that he's like stuck in this period in his childhood and he can't like grow up and get out of it because this huge traumatic event happened to him, and it's just been like more traumatic events adding on to it. Like it's not like his father died in front of him and then he was able to like go on and have a normal life and like deal with the grief and trauma of that event. Like he's been surrounded by death and destruction and violence and just been like badly treated by like everyone who's around him. He really just can't get past that point. Like it's this cycle of him getting stuck in this kind of very like violent and awful situation, and because of that he's stuck in this place, and I'm like I want to be empathetic to that, and I know that like I should be empathetic to that, but at the same time he's still killing off a lot of people and it makes me uncomfortable. So like going on the flip side of that, like kind of where we have like Thorfinn like turning into something that's far more scary and in this weird ambiguous zone of like morality, and then going the opposite direction with Askeladd, who I think like fairly firmly fit into that kind of like villain antagonist role, and then shifting that into a place every once in a while where like it isn't that cut and dry is like so weird to me. Like great writing, obviously, but like I want to not like him. And I want to firmly stay in that. And then he keeps like saying things where I'm like, good point. Like, I understand where that mindset is coming from. And then like Thorfinn is off doing things that he shouldn't be. And I'm like, well, now I'm conflicted. I don't know how to feel. And I think that that's what I'm coming away from this, because we had like the one episode where there was a lot of fighting going on and there was a lot of violence. You know, it really leaned into the whole like pirate thing, you know, sword for hire. And then we had this one where it was just like, hey, this is the village where they hang out with like probably like families and stuff when it's winter and they're not out doing Viking things. I know that humanizing them is like what you should be doing as a writer, and I appreciate it from that side of things, but as an audience, I just want clear separation between the good and the bad people because I wanna be in a world that's less complex. But if nothing else, I've taken away from this that I like do not know enough about like early 11th century history to like fully follow what's going on. And I feel bad because I'm like trying, like with the map when they showed it, I was like, oh thank God I need a map. And like I feel like I need to have like notes up so that I can like go through and be like, right, that's like what happened, and I like follow like a timeline. I don't know how like historically accurate this is, so like I don't know if like me doing a bunch of research would be like helpful or confusing, but like I feel like I'm like losing track of things, like details, especially since we're like doing a lot of time jumps. So there's a lot of like stuff that's kind of being skipped over, and I think probably that's because this is like I was saying, it's like technically a prologue to the actual story, so we're kind of like trying to get through the setup of like Thorfinn and this conflict and all that stuff so that we can get to like the actual story that I think is happening in the next season. So that might be part of it, but like because we're skipping time a lot, it's like trying to keep track of everything while going through it. I was awful at history too. I cannot memorize stuff, like just like dates and just like information. I need to like have like some kind of pattern to it. I was really good at like math and physics because there's like patterns that you just have to memorize and then figure out like how the pattern applies to stuff. Whereas like history, I mean, obviously there are patterns in history. Unfortunately, we like to keep doing the same things over again, even though we know they don't work. It was also just like a lot of like names and dates, and I was awful at it, and I was awful at geography, so that's probably why I also need a map. I feel like maybe I should like start organizing my thoughts about what exactly is happening with the conflict before going into some of the future episodes where it looks like we are getting back into this war with Denmark. Yes, King of Denmark, I'm pretty sure. So maybe I should be taking some more notes in between episodes so I can keep track of everything. You can click this playlist to go and see my previous reactions, or you can subscribe so you miss the next time I post a Vinland Saga video, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!